Welcome back. This week's power rankings. First off, there's a light there. That's my studio light. So getting tired of fighting with the light from the sun on the board. So it's better just to have that. At 32 is New York Jets. I don't have anything to add to the Jets. It just feels like you're piling on, doesn't it? They're 0-13. This week they're going to play the LA Rams. The Rams have nothing on the line. I didn't look at that 40-3 win by Seattle and go, oh, hey, this is a great, big, huge, great game, because it was against the Jets. So, this is the problem. This is the problem now, that a Jets game only measures whether or not your team's underachieving, not what they're doing. This disaster, I would think after the 0-16 season, the coach is going to be gone. And I mean, they fired the defensive coordinator. Why not the offensive too? And I don't know. The Jets are a disaster, and my 0-16 video looks like it very well could end up coming to fruition, because the Rams aren't an easy win either. And thankful for the Jets' existence is number 31, which is Jacksonville. Jacksonville this week, they lose 31-10 at home against Tennessee. So that's a division rival. Doesn't matter. They're now 1-12. So, as bad as Jacksonville's been, and for how long Jacksonville's been bad, this feels worse. This feels way worse. And this is a team that was the running butt end of the jokes on The Good Place. And they're funny jokes, because they feel timeless, which is kind of too bad for Jacksonville. But yeah, the only reason that these guys aren't last is New York is just so bad that it doesn't matter what Jacksonville does. It doesn't matter how badly they lose. I'm like, no, I'm not dropping them to 32nd. Man, dropping to 30th is Cincinnati. So if anybody wants to say that Shannon plays favorites with teams he cheers for, Dallas beat him 30-7, and I said that was going to switch spots. But notice, that was the battle for 28th. Somebody jumped him. And so Cincinnati's down to 30th. They're 2-10-1. This season's been a complete unmitigated disaster. After last year, which was a complete unmitigated disaster. Well, better luck next year. And the team that beat them 30-7 is Dallas. So Dallas, like I said, switched spots with Cincinnati, but they stay in the same spot. Now Dallas is 4-9. They should be completely out of it. But they're in the same division as Washington, the Giants, and the Eagles, so they're not completely out of it. I'm pretty sure with tiebreakers they can still get in there. So yeah, 4-9. If they can get to 7-9, who knows, right? Who knows? Because yeah, I mean, Washington could finish 6-10. It's possible. And Dallas this week. So for Cincinnati, not that it matters, they're at home against Pittsburgh, so they're dead. Pittsburgh should be ornery after 2 straight losses. For Dallas, their upcoming game, they're at home against San Francisco. That could be a very competitive game. Because again, Dallas is not technically out of it. Now, who are technically out of it at 28th is the Chargers. So, Chargers gear in remembrance of them actually getting a win this week over Atlanta, 20-17. So go Chargers. They're 4-9 now. They're last place in their division. They technically can still catch Denver. I'm not really worried about whether or not they catch them past Denver. I don't think it matters. I really don't think it matters. Chargers are just... This is where, again, my favorite teams stop at 28. 1 and 2. And done. I love being a football fan. And thinking, well, I don't have to watch the Chargers game or the Bengals game even if they're on, because I know it's going to happen. So, yeah, there you go. They have a combined record of 6-19-1. So, how's your season going? Number 27, I have Houston at the number 27 spot. Houston this week lost 36-7 against Chicago. So, Chicago did end that slide. For Houston, this upcoming week, they're in Indianapolis. I anticipate a loss there. For Houston, they are currently sitting at, I believe it's 4-9. Yep, 4-9. They're above Jacksonville. So, yeah, for Houston, they're just playing out the string, and not very well against a Chicago team that, again, Chicago had to win that game. That was an important game for Chicago. Houston's not really playing anything, and so That to me says a lot about the difference in these games. Number 26, Detroit. The Lions this week, they did lose against Green Bay 31-24. It was close because, those divisional matchups tend to be close, but Green Bay gets the win. For the Detroit Lions, they sit at 5-8. They're last in that division. Competitive division, and yet only one team's above 500. So, right, for Detroit this coming week, they're in Tennessee. So they're in tough this week against a Tennessee Titans team that, working in their favor, Tennessee is so wildly inconsistent and unpredictable that maybe Detroit goes in and gets that victory. I don't think they do, but maybe, because I do have a Detroit jersey and hat, so that would work for me for next week if they won it, right? It's funny too, because for people who watch this channel and normally watch the hockey channel, if you're not getting the picture yet that I don't have nearly as many football jerseys, I don't know what more to tell you other than you've basically seen all of them this year already. I've got a Chicago one somewhere too. There are a couple others that I have, but yeah, it's much smaller collection than say the hockey one, which is this room. But yeah, so Detroit at 26. At 25. So last week I heard towards the end of the game you have to play Carson Wentz. You can't go over to Jalen Hurts because Philadelphia is still in this, and Philadelphia needs to play Carson Wentz. He'll figure it out, and who cares? And keep playing. You can't give up. The idea being that if they went to their other quarterback, they were giving up. They didn't. For Philadelphia this week, what was the final score of that game? They end up winning it over New Orleans 24-21. Now, I'm not saying New Orleans had a great game either. They didn't. But Philadelphia wins it, and that's the first loss that New Orleans suffered without Breeze since Breeze went down. Now, for Philadelphia, they go into Arizona, and Arizona can be inconsistent as well. So for Philadelphia, who are 4-8-1, they're not out of this. They should be, yes, they should be. But if they could win in Atlanta, get to 5-8-1, you never know. They might pull themselves out of that bottom row. But now they have a bit of a quarterback controversy in that Carson Wentz hasn't had good numbers, and Jalen Hurts got himself a win. So Hurts should be the starter, and that's kind of how that's supposed to work with the NFL. More than other leagues, it's supposed to be, what have you done for me lately? And by lately, you mean the last 3 weeks. You don't usually see football players get that much of a pass if they're not playing very well, because the seasons are much shorter, careers are much shorter, and we'll see how things go for Philadelphia from here. Number 24, Carolina. Now, for Carolina, they're 4-9. They lost at home against Denver 32-27. This coming week, they're in Green Bay. They should lose that game because Green Bay's playing for number 1 seed, and Carolina's playing out the string. Carolina again, they're close. They didn't get blown out this week, but for Denver, it's a win that, I don't know. For Denver, I feel bad. I still feel bad about that game that they lost when they didn't have a quarterback, because think about it. If they could have pulled off an upset that week, they'd be 6-7. Hey, you never know, but they're 5-8 instead. Now, in the case of Carolina, they're 4-9, and it's just not going to happen. Number 23, the New York Giants. So the Giants this week, they lost at home against Arizona 26-7. And for the Giants this coming week, they're at home against Cleveland. They should get a really ornery Cleveland team. Cleveland should be rightfully choked. So for the Giants, it's not necessarily getting better. They fall out of first place. They're now 5-8. Cannot believe they were in first place at 5-7, but I digress. At 5-8, they drop out of first place. And so for the Giants, we'll see what they're made of this week. Number 22, Atlanta. Now for Atlanta, they lost the game by 3 points against the Chargers. I didn't push them down that far because, no. For Atlanta now, they are sitting at 4-9, same record as Carolina. They're right next to each other. And for the Falcons, this week they're at home against Tampa. They probably lose that one too. But we'll see if they keep it close or if Brady and the Buccaneers blow them out. Number 21, Denver. You'll notice I'm not talking about the playoff picture yet other than the NFC East, because good reason. So for Denver, they're 5-8, coming off of that win over Carolina, and now they're at home against Buffalo. That could deceptively actually be a pretty good game. I'm going to go right out on a limb and I'm going to say that's going to end up being a much better game than people might think when you see a team that's 10-3 against a team that's 5-8. I think that could be a fun one to watch. Because again, Denver, you just never know. And for Buffalo, maybe they're on a bit of a high right now, and you have to think, don't get ahead of yourselves and don't overlook Denver. I could see that as kind of being a trap game, right? Number 20, Chicago. So for the Bears, they finally break that losing streak. They went 36-7 over Houston. They're number 20 on the board. They're going into Minnesota this week, which is a key game. Both Minnesota and Chicago at 6-7, and they're both on the cusp, meaning they are the teams that are just below the playoff line, behind Arizona, who are 7-6. So Chicago or Minnesota, they need to get hot. One of them needs to get hot, and then they need some help. They need for Arizona to lose out a little bit and give them a chance of getting in. But Chicago's not done, and so they're there at number 20. Number 19, San Francisco might be done. They lose 23-15 at home against Washington, and I think that's the nail in the casket for them. They're now 5-8. I don't see an 8-8 team getting into the playoffs. They're already too far back to catch anybody else in their division. Really, they could realistically think about catching Arizona, but it's not going to happen. So for San Francisco, it's basically a done deal. They're one game behind Minnesota and Chicago, but again, Minnesota and Chicago aren't in great positions to make the playoffs either. So some good fights shown by San Francisco. Next year, I think they'll be back in the playoffs. It's just not happening this year. So, yeah, 19. Injuries have definitely hurt their season the whole way through. Number 18. This is the highest they've been. The whole Kevin Malone thing was kind of funny the first time I did it. Now I'm like, you know what? Yeah, the Washington Kevin Malones. I kind of like it. I kind of like it. I kind of like the idea of Kevin Malone pumping his fist and yelling yes every time they get a touchdown. And they beat San Francisco. So I'm like, I was toying with where to put them on the board, and I was like, I'm going to drop San Francisco down and put them there. They are first in their division at 6-7, which is a little better than what we thought they were going to be. We had an anticipation that a team with 10 losses might win the division. Now it's possible Washington gets to 10 losses. But for Washington, they're at home against Seattle. We'll see, right? I mean, if they could beat Seattle, get to 7-7, we might have something going on here. We might actually have an NFC East winner that's not too shabby. So I didn't see that coming, and I have to say it's one of the most entertaining things that's happened so far this season, in a season that's been very entertaining to watch, which in part is because I'm paying a lot more attention to the NFL this year than normal because of hockey being closed down, right? So that's just the way that works. I'm going to have more attention paid to the NFL than otherwise would normally be the case. But yeah, so the Washington football team, they're 6-7, which is not a great record, but they've won a few in a row, and they're right there. They're first in their division. Why not Washington? Why not us? That should be their rallying cry. Number 17, Minnesota. Minnesota's 6-7. They lost 26-14 against Tampa Bay. I didn't think I should bust them down for that. They are, as I said, 6-7. They're a cusp team. They're just below the line. That loss hurts. So instead of being 7-6, being 6-7, and now they've got to worry about Chicago. But for Minnesota, I didn't bust them for that because I thought, Tampa Bay's a pretty good team, so I'm going to leave them where they're at. Number 16. This is where it gets tough. New England. Now, Washington, I might be able to justify putting them up as high as here. I didn't want to put them that far up in the list yet because it is possible that Washington gets destroyed by Seattle and then I'm stuck. So New England, they get destroyed by the Rams 24-3, and now for New England, they are going to be in Miami. And Miami, that's one they probably lose, but division rivalry, we'll see how they do. New England is now 6-7. Their playoff fate is basically sealed because the 8-5 Ravens are sitting outside a playoff spot. So the 6-7 New England Patriots, they're not making the playoffs. But the season's going to end up being probably maybe 7-9, and we can discuss what they can do going forward. But New England, that's where I got them at. Number 15, Vegas. Vegas gets killed 44-27 by Indianapolis this week. Indianapolis a good team, so I didn't bust them too much for that. They're at home against the Chargers this week. They have to destroy the Chargers. If the Chargers come out and keep themselves close to the Raiders, don't be surprised if the Raiders end up dropping, even with a victory. Because right here is Washington, and they could be in the second row next week. I'm here for it. I want it. I want to see an upset over Seattle. I apologize to Seahawks fans, and I know there are many, but I would like to see Washington go as far with this as possible. I want it. I do. And then we need to get an online petition going, which go nowhere. They do nothing, to make Kevin Malone officially the face of the team. Shouldn't be anybody offended by that. The Washington Kevin Malones. Let's make it happen. Number 14, Arizona. So talked about Arizona. Arizona does have consistency issues, but Arizona's now 7-6. They won over the Giants 26-7, and this week they are at home against Philadelphia. That's a winnable game for them. And then for Arizona, with a win, they can really sort of solidify that spot, because either Minnesota or Chicago is going to win, not both, obviously. So then they'll put themselves 2 games ahead of either Minnesota or Chicago, and really only have one team they have to worry about at that stage. So, yeah, we'll see whether or not Arizona is able to get that done this week. They should be able to, right? Right, they should be able to. Number 13, Miami. Miami doesn't drop very much this week. For Miami, the loss they suffered was... I'm looking for the exact score on this here. So I write them all down, and I watch these games, and then we get to the power rankings, and it's like my brain goes, yeah, well, I'm out of here. So this coming week for Miami, they are at home against New England, and right now they're 8-5 coming off of the loss this week, and likely not going to be first in their division, because there's a team that's going to be first in their division for the first time since the 90s. Yeah. So for Miami, who lost... This is them right here. They lost against Kansas City. See, I knew. I was like, I don't see it on the board. They lost against Kansas City 33-27. Well, I wasn't going to bust them for that. So they do take a bit of a drop, but only I think it's one spot off where they were last week. It's not much. And holding KC, so you're only 6 points back. Not too shabby. Not too shabby. And I know there's late points here and there, and it makes it maybe flattering, but that's fine. Number 12, Baltimore. So Baltimore moves up to 12, and last night's game, 47-42 over Cleveland. What was that last 2 minutes? And, okay, so he had a cramp. Now, if he had a cramp in his leg that took him out of the game, if Lamar was taken out of the game with a leg cramp, he shouldn't have been running to the locker room like that. Now, the speculation's been that maybe he had to use the little boys' room, and he ran, or he had an accident, and he had to go to the washroom. Now, there's no shame. Okay, there's some shame, but there's... Okay, it may very well be a shame thing that's having him say it was a leg cramp. But I did notice when he came back out onto the field, he had a bit of a limp when he was in the back area. However, when he was in the game after, he didn't have a limp, and they won the game. So, huge win for Baltimore. Maybe a season-saving win, because remember, they're not in the playoffs right now. Baltimore is really in a tough division. They have 2 other teams in the division and the Bengals. And so for Baltimore, as we go into this coming week and they're at home against Jacksonville, that's good news. They will be able to beat Jacksonville in all likelihood, and then they're looking for a loss by Miami so they can jump into a playoff spot. But who thought at this point in the season Miami, Cleveland, and Buffalo would all be in playoff spots right now? Who saw that coming? Because, nah. And that Baltimore would be on the outside looking in. That's kind of weird. But Baltimore's win last night, that could be one of those huge building victories for them. Number 11, Seattle. I don't know what the win over the Jets tells you other than they beat the Jets. And this week they're in Washington. So Seattle, who are from Washington, that's why the Seattle-Washington matchup is kind of fun to say. They should beat Washington. But look at that face. Right? Number 10, Tennessee. Not a lot of movement in the top 10 this week. Tennessee beats Jacksonville 31-10, which is what was expected. Now they're at home against Detroit. And, of course, for Tennessee, they are leading their division, but they're tied with Indianapolis, which is why number 9 is Indianapolis. Indianapolis, 9-4. For Indy, they this week went in and beat Las Vegas 44-27. And then this coming week, they're at home against Houston. So both teams in a position where they should be able to get the victories. They're against teams that are playing out the string. And we should see both of them 10-4 coming out of this week. And it's likely it'll be Indianapolis ahead of Tennessee. It's just a matter of whether or not both of them move into the top row. They're going to need another team in the top row to lose. And to start the top row is a team that lost this week, and that's Cleveland. That loss against Baltimore drops them down a little bit. Not too much. Again, I don't want to overreact. And for Cleveland, now they're going in against the New York Giants, and they're still 9-4. So there's no reason to panic yet. They haven't clinched a playoff spot, and Baltimore's now only one game behind them instead of being gone. But you don't need to panic yet if you're a Cleveland fan. There might be some mild concern, but they prove they can score. It's just a matter of being able to defend, and not being able to defend against Baltimore's quarterback, who is pretty good. It's not the greatest shame in the world. So Cleveland stays in the top row, but we'll see whether or not Baltimore catches up to them this week. Cleveland's got to win this game this week. Number 7, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming off their 26-24 win over Minnesota. And now for Tampa Bay, this upcoming week, they are in against Atlanta. So yeah, Tampa Bay should be able to win that one. For Tampa, they are currently number 6. They are a wild card in the NFC. So we'll see pretty soon here whether or not Tom Brady's able to work playoff magic for Tampa the way that he did for the New England Patriots. Number 6, the Rams. So the Rams jump up to number 6. Their win this week over the New England Patriots, 24-3. Statement game? Sure, why not? It's still the Patriots. Even if they're not a playoff team right now, it's still the Patriots. And for the Rams this week, they are at home against the Jets. The only thing that can happen to the Rams is they move down, unless one of the teams ahead of them loses again. Now, for the Rams, they're sitting at 9-4. They're going to have at least a 10-win season, you have to think, because they have the Jets this week. And we'll see how the Rams do in the playoffs as well. I'm kind of excited about seeing how the Rams do in the playoffs. I'm kind of excited about the playoffs in general. And I'll get into previews before we get into the playoffs. But for the Rams right now, they're the number 3 seed in the NFC. So we'll see how that goes. Number 5. So last week, Steelers fans were really upset. How dare Shannon bust Pittsburgh down? And I saw, well, Shannon hates Pittsburgh because he hated the Penguins. I don't hate the Steelers. Never hated the Steelers. I know I'm a Bengals fan. I'm supposed to. I've never hated the Steelers. And that's never been a thing. And so the Steelers dropped down to 5 because they didn't look very good against Buffalo. They lost 26-15. I kept waiting. I kept saying, all right, so this is where Big Ben's gonna nope. So this is where interception. I kept waiting for it. I kept waiting for that miracle comeback. And now they're in Cincinnati this week, so they're gonna win. They're gonna stop their losing streak at 2. But what are they going to look like against Cincinnati? And for the Bengals, no pressure. We'll see how it goes. And we saw this week, if you can pressure Roethlisberger, you might have a chance. So for the Steelers, they have to turn this around. They're now no longer the number 1 seed in the AFC, and they're not playing very well. And that's been the case. This is something I've always said in hockey. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen is if you play a game and you're not playing particularly well and you win it. Because it can tell your team, oh yeah, we're good. We're good. And so if a coach says, look, we need to work on this, the players might look at the standings and go, well, no, we're really good. We're good. We've got this. Don't worry about it, coach. We're fine. So those couple of losses might very well be the best thing that's happened to Pittsburgh this year. Number 4, New Orleans. So New Orleans, they take a bit of a drop this week. They lose against Philadelphia 24-21. They need Drew Brees back. They desperately need Drew Brees back. Hill's trying his best out there, but they need Drew Brees back. So for New Orleans, this week they're at home against Kansas City. Kansas City. And now their record at 10-3, they're tied with Green Bay. Green Bay has the tiebreaker. So New Orleans now doesn't have the bye. Only one team will have a bye in the opening round of the playoffs. And right now it's Kansas City and Green Bay that have the byes. So New Orleans takes a bit of a drop and Green Bay moves up. Green Bay haven't really been tested that much either. In Green Bay, beating Detroit 31-24, not a statement game. It's not. But they're at 10-3. They're ahead of New Orleans. And this is an interesting time in football where I think we might have two teams that are playing really, really well. And then for the others, I could see them being upset in the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised to see Green Bay get upset in a playoff game if they ended up falling out of that number one spot. I wouldn't be surprised to see them in a wild card game get pushed. And we'll see. Right now it looks like the AFC is the stronger of the two conferences, but we never really know until you get to the Super Bowl. And I have Green Bay at third, but their schedule has been a little bit easier than some of the other schedules, and we'll see how they do this week when they're at home against Carolina, a game they should win. They should win it. You would think by a minimum of 7 points, right? They've got to win it by at least a touchdown. Number 2 is Buffalo. So Bills fans, this is an exciting time. They beat Pittsburgh 26-15 in a game that everybody's watching, proving, hey, we're for real. They go to 10-3. They have an excellent chance to win their division for the first time in decades. This is the best this team's looked in a long time. And I've started hearing Josh Allen and comparisons to Jim Kelly. I don't know. I think that he's got more upside. I think that when all is said and done, Jim Kelly, who is a fantastic quarterback, we might be talking about how Allen was the best quarterback for Buffalo and Kelly was number 2. Now for Buffalo this week, they're in Denver. We'll see how that goes for them. It's going to be a big game, and if they can go to 11-3, and remember they're only one game back of Pittsburgh. They're 2 games back of Kansas City. They're not going to catch Kansas City in all likelihood, although Kansas City in against New Orleans, right? So for Buffalo, they have to keep looking ahead. They're the number 3 seed, and that could make things really, really interesting. I'm fascinated with the idea that right now we would have Buffalo and Indianapolis in a game, Tennessee and Cleveland, and Miami and Pittsburgh. So, right? Miami and Pittsburgh. And then you'd have New Orleans against Arizona, the LA Rams and Tampa Bay, and Washington and Seattle. So the Seattle and Washington game this week could be a preview for the playoffs. Oh, and Washington would have home field in that as well as the division winner. Which leaves number 1, Kansas City. So Kansas City, there might have been some consternation in recent weeks about whether or not they belonged at number 1 or another team belonged at number 1. I think the debate's really kind of over in that this week against Miami, when you've got your quarterback out there throwing interceptions and throwing 3 of them, and you still win, and your team still looks really good, and you still throw for a ton of yards, that really says all you need to know. Kansas City doesn't even have to play really, really well to win right now. Mahomes is that good, and they're able to overcome those mistakes. So now that they're going in against New Orleans, you have to think they're probably going to beat New Orleans, and right now they have the inside track on the number 1 seed at 12-1. So things are interesting in the National Football League, and I'm fascinated to see how things turn out. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And kudos to the Bills. This is what a run. And props to the Ravens this week. I may not like the Ravens, but I have to respect them for what they did this week. And Washington, the Washington football team. Good on you. Let's keep this going. Let's see if they can upset Seattle and get to 500, and then who knows, 9-7 and Super Bowl. There you go, Super Bowl. Let me know your thoughts though, as always, and I will talk to you again soon.